Buenas and half a day, todos hamzu, mananas y zuas. Many of God's blessing to each and every one of you here this early morning. This public hearing by the Committee on Human Resources, Hagåtña Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs is called to order. It is exactly 9 o'clock. For the record, in accordance with 5 GCA, Chapter 8, subsection 8107, public hearing notices were sent on Monday, November 6, 2023, adhering to the 5-day notice, and a second public notice on Thursday, November 9th. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, this hearing was noticed on the legislature's website at www.guamlegislature.com, and written testimonies, if anybody has, and if the listening audience have, they may be submitting it by emailing Senator Muña Barnes at guamlegislature.org, or may hand deliver to our office at Suite 411, 134 West Soledad Avenue, Hagåtña, Guam, 96910. Ladies and gentlemen, on the agenda, we only have one, but it's going to be a long one, a roundtable hearing on cybersecurity of the government of Guam. Joining me here to share in the presentation, we have various agencies from the government of Guam. I'd like to thank each and every one of them for being here. And before we proceed with this roundtable discussion, I would like to provide some general rules of conduct for all who are in attendance. The conduct of this hearing shall be as follows. Again, just rules and regs. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of the sign-up sheet. Written testimonies may be read and submitted to the committee. Please provide legislative staff with your written testimony. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony only once. Lengthy testimony should be summarized to 5 minutes. Once you are done, please remain in the room for any questions by my colleagues if they come in. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance and the nature of this agenda. Personal inferences to the character of the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the public hearing room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Please state your name for the record and where you're from. And in the interest of time, if there are any questions from my colleagues when they come in, if we need to go through a second round, we'll go through it. And of course, a part of the rules of engagement, if they're not removed, if they're not followed, of course, our Sergeant of Arms can have the individual removed. So that being said, the roundtable hearing this morning is cybersecurity of the government of Guam. For the record, since everybody's here, this is going to, I'm going to try and make it as accommodating to each agency to make their presentation, but I'll go ahead and start. So I'll do my opening testimony, and then I'll yield first to OTEC as the oversight chair on the agency. And then what we'll do is, I guess I'm left-handed, I'll start from my left and I'll work down. Okay, or I did say those who signed in the sign-up sheet, so maybe I can work that way too. So I want to say that cybersecurity is a critical fight we must win, but despite the best efforts of our local and federal agencies, more, and I say more, must be done to protect our island and critical infrastructure. We are here this morning to receive updates from the Office of Technology and other agencies on the strategies and actions of that the government of Guam has taken to shore up our defense against persistent advanced attacks from hackers and state-sponsored hacking groups. I applaud OTEC for being committed to submitting an approved plan to its federal partners and stand eager to learn what this strategy will net Guam for our collective quest to combat cybersecurity threats. At the same time, I hope that other agencies like Guam Homeland Security and the Judiciary of Guam can add to this important discussion, including the critical work their staff are undertaking, and I'm glad they're here too, and what local investments would aid in this fight. We must recognize that a worst-case scenario attack could cripple local communications and compromise coordinate efforts between America and her allies during a time when seconds could save thousands of lives. And, we must recognize that it is our government's responsibility to not lead the defense of our internet-connected infrastructure, but also to articulate the strengths and the weaknesses we have identified in this quest to secure our digital borders. But first, we must recognize the ongoing work from our local experts and stakeholders. And with that, as I said, I was going to turn it over to you, but I did say I was going to have everybody introduce themselves for the record so that we can have the listening audience know who's here. And I will start to my left in no particular, and just work down. Just say your full name, what agency you're from.
Buenas, good morning, everyone. I'm Vince Kichuchu. I'm the hospital IT administrator.
Thank you.
Buenas, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lillian Perez Posadas, Guam Memorial Hospital.
Good morning. My name is William Kando. I'm the Assistant Administrative Operations for the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority.
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Arden Bonto from Port Authority of Guam IT.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Victoria Foreman. I'm the Cybersecurity Analyst for the Office of Technology.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. My name is Frank Lujan. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Government of Guam.
Good morning.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Vince Dela Cruz. I'm from the University of Guam's Office of Information Technology.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator. Melvin Queck from Guam Power Authority.
Thank you.
Buenas and Hafide, Madam Chair. I am Esther Agigi, and I am the Homeland Security Advisor.
Hafide, Senator. My name is Lucia Perez. I'm ESF2 and Cybersecurity with Guam Homeland Security.
Good morning, Vice. Robert Robigo with the Judiciary of Guam.
Thank you. And also joining me, good morning, Senator Taitagui. Thank you very much for coming to this roundtable discussion. So with that being said, I'll yield the floor to you, Mr. Frank Lujan from OTEC.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Frank, you speak into the mic. Make it a little bit closer so the listening audience can hear.
Yes. Okay, my slide presentation can come up, okay. Next slide. Madam Chair, honorable members of the 37th Guam Legislature, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony as the Chief Technology Officer and Director of the Office of Technology. I'd like to emphasize the critical role that cybersecurity plays in the shaping of digital landscape of our government. In this era of unprecedented technological advancement, our pursuit of innovation must be propelled by an unwavering commitment to securing our digital infrastructure. So the protection of digital assets in an age where data is the new currency, our government holds a vast repository of sensitive information. Cybersecurity is our shield against the ever-evolving threats seeking to exploit vulnerabilities in our systems, ensuring the integrity, confidentiality, and our availability of our digital assets. Next slide, please. So, the resilience of our critical infrastructure. Our essential services from power grids to emergency response systems rely heavily on interconnected digital networks. Cyber threats can manifest as disruptive forces, potentially compromising the very fabric of our society. Prioritizing cybersecurity is an investment in the resilience of our critical infrastructure. Next slide. Innovation and technology adoption. As we continue to embrace digital transformation, the pace of innovation quickens. Cybersecurity is not a hindrance to progress, but an enabler. It allows us to adopt new technologies and confidence, fostering a tech-forward government that efficiently serves the needs of our citizens. Next slide. So the mitigation of financial and reputational risks. The repercussions of a successful cyber attack extends beyond the digital realm. Financial losses, damage to our reputation, and the erosion of public trust are all potential outcomes. A robust cybersecurity strategy mitigates these risks, preserving both our financial stability and the trust for those we serve. Next slide. Adherence to regulatory standards. Our responsibility goes beyond the immediate needs of our community. It extends to compliance with national and international standards for our data protection and privacy. Cybersecurity measures are the cornerstone of our commitment to ethical governance, regulatory compliance, and accountability. Cybersecurity is not a standalone function, but an integral aspect of our technological ecosystem. It is the foundation upon which we build a secure, resilient, and technologically progressive government. As stewards of innovation, let us collectively champion cybersecurity as a strategic imperative, ensuring that our digital future is one of trust, stability, and prosperity. Next slide. So the emergence of the Volt Typhoon APT underscores the dynamic and sophisticated nature of contemporary cyber threats. Next slide. This advanced persistent threat utilizes tactics, techniques, and procedures such as, next slide, living off the land, operating stealthily within existing infrastructure. Addressing this threat demands constant vigilance, technological innovation, and collaboration across agencies and stakeholders. Next slide. OTEC grapples with the persistent challenge of a shortage in skilled technology professionals. This shortage not only hinders our ability to counter emerging cyber threats effectively, but also underscores the urgent need for strategic investments in education, training, and recruitment. Cultivating a proficient workforce is vital for maintaining the resilience of our digital infrastructure. Next slide. You can go to the next one. And then the next. So the ever-evolving cybersecurity landscape necessitates continuous adaptation. Our collective ability to stay ahead of emerging threats requires not only the latest technologies, but also collaborative efforts across departments, especially in the realm of emergency management. Ensuring a unified response is essential for the safety and security of our island. Next slide. While OTEC is committed to its mission, we encounter tactical pain points that impact our ability to fulfill our responsibilities. Budget constraints limit our capacity to make essential cybersecurity investments and upgrades. Procurement challenges, particularly in managing the replacement of end-of-life hardware and software, hinder our ability to maintain a secure and up-to-date technology environment. Additionally, conflicting legislation creates roadblocks in our collaborative support mission with other agencies, necessitating a thorough review and alignment with the dynamic nature of our responsibilities. Next slide. President Biden's key cybersecurity initiative, encapsulated in the pillar, "A call to one is a call to all," speaks to the collaborative ethos required in the face of cybersecurity. This principle emphasizes shared responsibility, collective action, and information exchange. It aligns with the imperative for unity and fortification, not only at the national level, but also globally. In conclusion, I seek your support and understanding in addressing these critical issues. Guam's technological resilience is integral to our overall security and prosperity. I look forward to working collaboratively with you to overcome these challenges and ensure a secure and prosperous digital future for Guam. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'd like to turn the floor over to Ms. Victoria Foreman to present our recently approved cybersecurity plan.
Before Victoria starts, I'll just go ahead and introduce our colleagues that also joined us. Good morning, Senator Chris Barnett, and also Senator Dwayne St. Nicholas. Manana Sizuas, thank you for coming. I yield back to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My slide deck, please. So my name is Victoria Foreman. I'm the cybersecurity analyst for the Office of Technology. My background is a Bachelor of Science in Information and Cybersecurity Risk Analysis, and I'm currently working on my professional degree, my master's in Cybersecurity Analytics and Operations with Penn State. Next slide, please. We have a vision here to collaboratively build a comprehensive island-wide cybersecurity program to empower all government agencies to collaborate and effectively prevent and respond to cyber attacks. With this mission, we want to identify, assess, mitigate, and reduce cyber risks with Guam's critical stakeholders, government agencies, public and private institutions. Next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see we have the Cyber Planning Committee. It includes members from Guam Homeland Security, with our grants manager, our Homeland Security advisor, the Fusion Center, or a cybersecurity liaison, members of the Office of Technology, as well as the National Guard, great stakeholders, the Office of Attorney General, Guam Power Authority, IT and cybersecurity, and all the critical stakeholders that we have here on island. Next slide, please. This is our working group. It consists of, but not limited to, representatives from all these areas, which includes the court, Department of Education, members of the community. It was to be able, and financial institutions, fuel provider, telecommunication companies. The purpose of this working group is to kind of really understand the intricacies and gaps in each division or each agency. We're all at different maturity levels, so trying to get a grasp of all that so that we can let leadership understand where our biggest issues are, where we need to kind of pump our resources. Which leads me to the next slide, please. The goals and objectives. With the collaboration and partnerships, we can actually have a more robust maturity level, working together, kind of understanding each other's pain points and gaps. We do this by actually creating assessments, going to each agency and kind of really understanding what their baseline is. That will help them, in turn, create their cybersecurity governance and policies, which are kind of just like rules of what to do in their networks. Then also to develop our workforce development based off of the NIST framework, and which includes NICE, which is kind of a section of the NIST framework just in regards to seeing a career pathway for our cyber professionals. Then we have the implementation of best practices, risk management, emergency communications and business continuity, and our community outreach. Next slide, please. For the collaboration and partnerships, and one of the goals and objectives was to create a directory of contacts so that we can have an understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are for each agency, who the key players are. It's also to be able to create a platform where all of us can kind of securely share information and best practices, lessons learned. That's kind of what the U.S. and most of the states are actually doing right now. They're communicating frequently so that they can kind of really understand the issues and the struggles that each IT department is actually having, or agency. Then it's to also narrow it down to the roles and responsibilities, so that when an incident actually does occur, we know what we have to do, and we're not scrambling at the last minute with code calls trying to figure out who can help us. With that, one of the big initiatives too is to be able to collaborate and train together with mission stakeholders from Department of Defense, the Guam Army National Guard, and federal agencies such as the FBI, CISA, Coast Guard, etc. Next slide, please. So as I was talking about the assessments, it's to kind of help IT government agencies conduct an asset inventory of everything that's connected to their network. These will also include self-evaluations and assessments through CISA and MSISAC, which our federal counterparts kind of promote. We also want to be able to implement data classification to help assist our agencies determine what our crown jewels are. If we don't have a finite amount of resources, we kind of need to figure out which one's important. And then a requirement for this NOFO was that we needed to all kind of fill out the NCSR if we're to actually receive monies from this grant. Next slide, please. So cybersecurity governance is kind of like the rules. And I wanted to kind of point out, it would show the authorities and responsibilities of individuals in each agency should an incident occur. We do this by implementing policies based off of the NIST framework for OTEC. I believe some other agencies have some other frameworks that they, in industry, are aligning themselves with. Ultimately, we want to be able to develop response plans and a disruption response plan, an overarching one for the island, so that should an actual incident occur that affects all agencies, we know how to quickly recover. Then we also want to be able to develop trainings and workshops so that we can test these plans and these rules and see whether or not there's other gaps. And here's where I believe the legislature can actually help us. We want to be able to work closely with you to advance bills aimed at strengthening information and cybersecurity, and especially in particular, the procurement regulations that kind of make it difficult for us to really secure things on a timely basis. Next slide, please. Developing our workforce is an issue that's kind of felt worldwide. To address this, we were going to train and certify our current IT departments, personnel, and also create a workforce pipeline with a career pathway so that we actually can retain and recruit talent. And in doing that, this kind of all comes down to appointing a Chief Information Security Officer, a CISO, which will kind of help reinforce the united whole-of-government cybersecurity strategy and facilitating collaboration with agencies, organizations, and critical stakeholders to bridge those gaps in technical assistance and support for cyber plan development and maturity. Next slide, please. There were a bunch of implementations of best practices listed for this NOFO, but I wanted to focus on two that I found very important that we can actually attain so we'd have some metrics. It was to be able to implement free scanning services from MSISAC and CISA, such as the cyber hygiene vulnerability, web application, etc. Also to develop securities around non-replaceable, unsupported, or end-of-life software and hardware that are accessible from the internet and move towards to procuring replacements. Ultimately, we want to be able to get these controls implemented so that we can start moving in a journey towards zero trust. Next slide, please. So cybersecurity is really about risk management. It's about letting leadership kind of understand what our risks are so that they can determine where they can actually push our efforts to and resources. In doing that, we need to be able to identify our crown jewels. We need to figure out what kind of risk appetite our leadership has. And we also need to build a risk awareness culture so that people can really understand that everybody has a role and everything that they do also kind of pertains to a limited amount of risk. Then we move to the training, which will lead us to the incident response. Next slide, please. Cybersecurity is an annex to emergency communications. I believe with FEMA's, they call it NIMS. It's an incident command structure organizational chart that's within that document. So over here, we have the ICS/ITSL designation. That's to help IT personnel kind of really understand where we plug in a large incident. The military, they utilize this command structure. FEMA is the one pushing this. So I just didn't really want our IT professionals to kind of plug in, and we have, on top of everything else that we're doing, kind of get shoved into a role that we don't really know anything about. And with that will come the tabletop exercises, so we can kind of understand what our role is, exercise our plans, and figure out our gaps. And last but not least was the community outreach, to be able to provide cyber awareness so that everybody kind of knows their roles in regards to like GovGuam and our systems. I was asked by one of the senators to actually kind of introduce what the ICS structure was. Next slide, please. So this is the overarching organizational chart for an incident command. And this is what everybody kind of falls under in emergency response. What it does is it actually helps people, it eliminates inefficiency. It helps kind of keep prioritized controls or prioritized in developments, I guess, with this kind of structure so that nobody's stepping over each other's toes and we're all kind of moving towards the same goal under the incident commander, which is ultimately to get back on our feet as fast as we can, right? And address any emergency issues that we have. Next slide, please. This was actually introduced by FEMA's the NIMS that I was talking about, National Incident Management System, Information and Communications Technology Functional Guidance, and this was just recently created in March of 2023. This actually shows where our IT departments and our IT leaders, our cybersecurity unit leader, would kind of plug in to these large incident command structures. So finally, next slide, please. We're trying to crawl, walk, run in our journey. With cybersecurity, it's not like a plug-in, fix everything, or secure all of a sudden. It's a journey. There's things that we have to kind of do along the way. So our first step was to create this plan so that we all have a jointed, united effort, and there's no disconnect in our movement and our progress and our maturity. Next, we're going to be able to create assessments and baselines so that we can figure out our crown jewels, and that's what we want to protect. Next slide, please. Next is to replace the legacy equipment and outdated software that is prevalent in all government. I think that it's an issue that we actually have to address because whenever there's an out-of-date or end-of-life equipment, those are security gaps. And then, last but not least, is our workforce development. And we actually have a plan to work with the university and GCC to kind of build out and create like a cohort, so to say, and get them designated in this center of excellence for cyber defense. And all this is actually going to be implemented and worked on with the collaboration of all the critical stakeholders that you see here, as well as DoD, INDOPACOM, and the feds. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victoria. Before I move on, good morning, Mananasitos, Senator Roy Canata. Thank you for joining us. So as I said in the beginning, I was going to just to literally a round table and work it. And what my main question was going to be, can you share your experiences dealing with cybersecurity in your agency? And I know that some agencies were victims of breaches. And what have you done what details can you share for one, and what have you done to update that? So I'll start from my left again, and I know the first one is GMH, and if you can just for the record again, Mrs. Posada, share your team, and then you can proceed. And then we'll work it down like that if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Vice Speaker, and thank you, Senators, for this opportunity. I guess I'll introduce my team here. Mr. William Kando to my left, he's the Assistant Administrator of Operations, and to my right is Mr. Vincent Kichicho, who is the Administrator of our IT department. And then also we have Ms. Rachel Manglonia, who is the Assistant Administrator of our IT department. We have Ms. Cindy Hansen, who is our Communications and Marketing Director, PIO. So, again, thank you for this opportunity, and if I may just kind of set the tone with some clarification, the term breach, as it is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations 45, subsection 164.402, it defines breach as the acquisition, access, use, or disclosure of protected health information. And so, for us, for our situation that occurred in March, when it was discovered by our IT team that there may have been some unauthorized intrusion into our network system. Let me also then further, we do have a report, a summary report that I can share with you that we have provided the governing body, our Board of Trustees, so they're very much aware of the details of that incident. And so therefore, the Guam Memorial Hospital completed a risk assessment report pursuant to subsection 164.402. The conclusion of the risk management officer is that there was no breach of protected health information. And the protected health information was not just patient information, but also employee information. And so there was no evidence of a breach of those protected health information. In an effort to assist our stakeholders and business associates in better understanding the events leading up to GMH's decision to shut down and then restore the network, GMH is providing the summary report to stakeholders, business associates, and those that share PHI with GMH. Please keep in mind that while reviewing this report, GMH cannot discuss or disclose too many facts because of the ongoing FBI investigation. Right when we found out of that suspicious activity, we reported it directly to the FBI agent right on that day. So here are the facts. During the evening hours of March 2, 2023, GMHA's IT team located evidence within GMHA's network that an unauthorized third party had been able to bypass GMHA's network firewalls. Further investigation by the IT team led the team to initially conclude that this unauthorized third party possessed the ability to access PHI. The team reviewed log entries and found multiple past instances of unauthorized entry that was previously undetected. The IT team assessed that this unauthorized third party had the ability to compromise PHI and other sensitive information. On the morning of March 3rd, 2023, the IT team informed GMHA's director of their findings. Relevant team members were consulted and the FBI was notified immediately. The IT team assessed that the only way to ensure network security would be to bring the network down and reboot it. Alternative methods of securing the network were discussed, but ultimately, the risk of theft of PHI or damage to the network was deemed too serious, and the decision to shut down the network was made near the close of the business day. A hospital-wide circular was issued informing all divisions that the network would be offline and that the hospital will go into manual mode beginning Saturday, March 4. Upon advice of the legal counsel, the director did not issue a hospital-wide or public notice regarding explaining the need to bring the network shutdown, and the decision was made in consideration of, 1, taking the network offline immediately without allowing staff some period of time was considered too great a risk to patient safety, thus a period of some hours was necessary to allow for the transition. Second, the hospital's network was vulnerable while it remained online. Ultimately, due to patient safety issues, the network was not taken offline until approximately 4 p.m. on March 4. On March 4, 2023, the GMHA network was shut down, and the tedious work for changing out all network internet protocol addresses and ranges began. With the technical assistance from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, we were just very fortunate that the CISA was also on site to do their assessment of our cybersecurity infrastructure security. And during the first week, a local IT firm, Quantum Technology Group, during the second week and third week, and also from the government of Guam's OTEC, thank you, Frank Lohan, until completion, the network recovery and restoration occurred on a daily basis, and completion of the restoration was accomplished about April 15, 2023. The complexity of bringing the network back online, bolstering security protocols, and ensuring data integrity prevented the hospital from conducting an in-depth assessment of the potential impact to PHI caused by the aforementioned unauthorized access. However, an initial assessment by the IT team review of log entries did not provide any evidence that PHI had been extracted from the network. In compliance with the local and federal laws, GMHA directed its risk management officer to work with the IT team members and conduct risk assessment regarding the nature of the intrusion and whether PHI and/or other sensitive data had been accessed, acquired, manipulated, or deleted. The risk assessment officer worked closely with the GMHA IT personnel and reviewed, among other things, network log entries, emails, text messages, and conducted interviews of all the IT staff. In summation, the risk assessment concluded that there were multiple access events initiated by a third party not authorized to access GMHA's network behind its firewalls, that the unauthorized third party could have accessed PHI during these events, but given the totality of the evidence, there is a low probability that protected health information held by GMHA was compromised, and there was no evidence that patient or employee financial or biographical data was compromised. In terms of strategies, I'm going to let Mr. Vince Kichichu and Mr. William Kando and also Rachel speak more on the strategies as far as, lessons learned and what we did to then prevent any future potential intrusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Posadas. Mr. Kichichu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning again, Senators. Thank you for the opportunity. For our strategies addressing the cybersecurity at GMH, what we've done is, in addition to having U.S. Department of Homeland Security, CISA, on site, doing the on-site vulnerability risk assessment, unfortunately or fortunately, it was done when the network was brought down because of this possible breach. But many thanks go out to the organizations that helped the hospital out, Quantum Technology Group, the Office of Technology and their staff, and as well as Mr. De La Cruz from the university. He assisted as well. So a lot of folks in the room had helped GMH in our network recovery restoration. Since then, the network is back to normal. We're at 100% pretty much. We have an after-action report that was presented to all the committees in the hospital and the Board of Trustees, as well as the summary that Mrs. Posadas had just read. But we continue to do our best to communicate and awareness throughout the hospital about cybersecurity and keeping things safe, data safe, and the system safe. Some of the strategies that we've worked on, of course, is creation of a network. We're trying to create a network infrastructure and cybersecurity section within the GMH IT department. Tonight, we have an HR subcommittee meeting to propose and hopefully obtain approval for creating this section. In addition to that, it's going to require creating positions for like a cybersecurity certified director as well as support staff. Of course, we want to recruit those folks. We don't have, currently, we really don't have cybersecurity certified staff, but we have some cybersecurity trained staff. We want to also create we're creating new cybersecurity policies and procedures for the hospital, creating annual mandatory cyber training for all GMH staff. Right now, our learning management system, we're using MCN, Medical Network Consultants, and we do have a cybersecurity training there as well as HIPAA security training, and we're making that mandatory annually for all GMHA staff. We're also going to be sending IT staff to any and all cybersecurity training or workshops, especially locally, and also exercises. We've been invited by OTEC, Homeland Security, Guam Army National Guard, on several events this year so far, and I'll name some of them. There's the GovGuam IT Peer Working Group focusing on cybersecurity, of course led by OTEC. We have monthly meetings. Ms. Foreman did mention that earlier. We participated in the Guam Cybersecurity Capacity Planning Workshop, GU-1. Is that what it's called? GU-1? Yeah. There's also, we participated with the Guam Army National Guard Cyber Exercise back on July 17th through the 19th. Participated with the Guam Statewide Communications Interoperability Plan, SCIP, Technology and Cybersecurity Webinar, October 12th. And we were invited to the most recent Central Pacific Cybersecurity 2023 Summit on November 6th and 7th. Unfortunately, we could not send anybody to that because we were strapped with manpower at that time. Of course, U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Infrastructure Agency, CISA, they did our cybersecurity assessment. We're asking them to come back next year, hopefully by February of 2024, to do another round now that our network has been restored and back to normal. And of course, communicating with the Guam, we've been communicating with Guam DHS CISA Cybersecurity Advisor. Everybody knows her. I think her name is Jenilyn Labrunda. On all cybersecurity related training, workshops, and risk assessments. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince. Bill?
Yes, good morning, Senators. And thank you for this opportunity to explain what transpired and the strategies that we've been implementing since then to make sure that we mitigate going forward and minimize going forward any kind of activity. Some activities are just not preventable. There's people out there trying to gain access to our systems, and so that's healthy for us to expect that. Just to add to the strategies, you can see from the strategies that we've implemented and also the report that our hospital administrator reviewed with you, we're developing, and Office of Technology also mentioned it in their presentation, this risk awareness culture. It's because of that culture that we continue to develop at GMHA that we saw something and we said something. So the staff in the lower ranks of the IT department, they saw something that transpired. They contacted the executive leadership, and we took it up the chain of command, and we basically did something as quickly as possible. So it's that culture that we continue to foster. See something, say something, and then respond accordingly. And that's why we were successful in this activity, in this response, and this restoration. And that's why we continue to develop and implement these strategies because we're not satisfied. We need to continue to strengthen our IT network and our systems to protect PHI. It's all about, for us, it's about protecting the rights of the patient and their information, going forward so that we can continue to meet our mission and provide the highest quality, the best patient care that we can provide.
Thank you. Thank you. Port? I apologize. Did you want any other member sitting in the audience to speak, Lillian, or is that okay? Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, honorable senators. My name is Arden from the Port Authority of Guam. As you know, we at the port is not really new to cybersecurity, and we are under the purview of Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard requires us for having a facility security plan, and under that plan has a cybersecurity annex. We also have free tools provided by partners such as CISA, FBI, OTEC, and several other entities. However, for us to truly have a rigid and solid cybersecurity protection, we need to implement a cybersecurity framework like what Victoria mentioned. And in our case, we're going for the NIST 800 and at least 90 to 100% completion. And on our last assessment, we're only at about 20% assessment. So what the port did is we had several little plans to complete. However, funding those little plans to complete the cybersecurity framework is not there. Also, the other problems we have is a legacy system. We have a sunsetted terminal operating system that needs to be replaced. So that's so far for the port. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning, Senators. Vince Dela Cruz from the University of Guam. As mentioned by Arden, as well as GMHA, as well as everybody else here, cybersecurity is not new to any IT department, right? I mean, it's been around for quite some time. We evolved, vulnerabilities evolved, and you know those are the challenges that we're faced with. So I'm not sure if anybody knows, but there was a cybersecurity incident at the university sometime in 2020. But during that time, the cybersecurity realm was still, I mean, it was there already, but the university was still building its capacity as we, I mean, even today we're still trying to build capacity. There was a network change that was meant to provide extra security, but the equipment that we were using was a bit dated, right? So that kind of made us vulnerable to an attack. Because the university has already been kind of practicing some of its cybersecurity measures, they were able to recover quickly. I would say quickly. I wasn't there during the incident, but in a fair amount of time. And you know what they did was they've also contracted with or what we did was we contracted with a cybersecurity vendor to kind of help us with the investigation and as well as the recovery. So with that incident, you know, the university looked at different strategies to kind of fill the gaps, because really what we're doing now is filling the gaps. As vulnerabilities come up, 0 day, right? We're always trying to fill the gaps where we are missing. So we look at technology. We talked about the challenges of technology, making sure all our equipment are not end of life. Just because they're working doesn't necessarily mean they keep us safe, right? Because there could be patches that maybe the equipment cannot handle at the time. The other piece is we are only as strong as our end users, right? Our weakest link would be our end users that we try to build capacity with. Not just our IT professional, but also our everyday users of our email, right? Of our technology, of our applications. We want to make sure that our users are trained and practice good cyber hygiene with their use of technology every day. Obviously, policies is important because we want to make sure that we are clear of what can and cannot be done throughout the network as well as the organization. And then lastly, as mentioned, really the other piece we're trying to focus on is preparedness, right? I don't think it's a when. I don't think it's an if. I think it's a when. it's going to happen. So when it does happen, we want to make sure that we have those layers of security that one, if we can stop them, great. If we can slow them down, even better. I mean, it would be a benefit to us. And one of the other things that the university did was, you know, during the restoration, while we think we backed up everything, maybe some of the backups aren't as updated as possible. So we looked at enterprise backup solution just to make sure that we can recover even quicker when an incident happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Good morning, Senators. Melvin Kwek from Guam Power Authority. Guam Power is heavily invested in cybersecurity. We actually started our path back in 2014 with the smart grid infrastructure improvements for Guam Power. It was in conjunction with the Department of Energy, and one of the requirements was to have a cybersecurity plan approved by them. This is to cover all the smart meter infrastructure that we have, substation automation, new technologies, fiber optic, everything that was being used to automate or provide automation for Guam Power Authority. For us, it's not just securing IT data, it's also securing operational technology. Nowadays, with 31 substations, managing the grid is not someone standing at a switch turning it on and off, but it's automation with the SCADA system that we have at Power System Control Center. We also do a lot of digitalization of services. If you guys ever have gone to our website, managingguam.com, you can actually see your usage on your power meter for every 15-minute intervals, which is actually great for consumers who want to see what's going on. But that also leverages technology to make it more convenient for customers, but that also opens the path for more cyber issues that we might have. So it's always urgent for us to address that. So we've been working with the Department of Energy for the past, I'm going to say, more than 15 years, just because we are considered critical infrastructure. Our cybersecurity plan follows the NIST 800, plus also the NERC requirements, which is National North American Electric Reliability Grid Corporation, right? And we participate with APPA, which is American Public Power Association, and we also are on their cybersecurity working committee, yes. As you guys know, this past 2 years, there's been a huge focus on cyber, just because of where Guam is, because our geopolitical situation, and just because the pandemic has brought cyber up to the forefront nowadays. And like everybody else on this working table here, we've been working closely with FBI, CISA, Guam Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, even NSA. I'm going to say the focus on cyber has increased so much, and the good thing about that too is the participation of our federal partners. 5 years ago, we would get visits from our federal partners saying, hey, how are you doing? We want to make sure you're okay. That's great. What can you do for us? But nowadays, and I think we can come to an agreement, is not only are they coming to say, how are you doing, but they're offering services, cyber hygiene assessments. This year alone, GPA and GWA has gone through 2 to 3 assessments by various federal agencies to ensure our our networks are safe, our security is safe, we have proper policies, procedures to protect customer data. Okay? And just like GMH, just like every other agency, customer data is important, because if it gets released, then we are the bearers, we are the responsible persons to make sure that is protected. Yeah. Some of the challenges we have, sorry, let me pull up my notes, is skill sets. As mentioned by everybody on this table, this is an island, and there is limited skill sets on the line to address cybersecurity. We've been working with GCC, with their computer science department. We've been bringing in some of their computer science graduates to work in a cybersecurity program at Guam Power. We have a cybersecurity internship, which is a 3-month paid internship to help develop those skills. And we are working now on a 1-year cybersecurity internship to bring in professionals, or cybersecurity professionals, who want to develop the skills, and if they pass the internship, then they'll be offered a job at GPA. Yeah. So we find it as a good learning experience to develop the local talent, because that's always been an issue. As you guys know, the military buildup is huge right now, and with the military buildup requires staff to manage that buildup. And personally, for GPA side, we've lost good people to the military over the past couple of years. Good people because they have the skill sets, they have the certifications, they have the knowledge, and they have the experience. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure everybody on this table has actually come to that result also at the same time. Yeah. So another challenge we have, of course, is funding. It's always been a funding issue. Trying to keep up with new technology, it's not cheap. Trying every single year, there's new technology comes up. A good example is AI now. AI is heavily involved in security. Well, that's a great technology that was not available, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago. Yeah. So, and we are dealing with an advanced adversary. I'm sorry to say, but North Korea, China, they probably have rooms where they just focus on Guam, whereas we just have 1 or 2 people in our IT department focusing on cyber. They have unlimited resources. They're paid to do this, and we're paid to protect them from 8 to 5 only. We can't tell them, hey, can you just cut off at 5 because we have to go home? It doesn't work that way. So, and yeah, skill sets and adversary. And also we have to deal with the criminal side of cyber. Since the pandemic, we've seen an increase in criminal activity. This is not adversaries from state-sponsored threats such as China, North Korea, you name it, but it's people trying to trick the customer into releasing critical information about credit card, where they live, or making payments. GPA has been hit with that many times just because we have our customer base of 50-some thousand customers, and they're it's an easy target for them. Yeah, so that's something we also have to defend too. Yeah, we have payment websites. We ensure that they're PCI DSS compliant. We try not to take on the responsibility of keeping the credit card numbers in file, just because of the fact that it actually opens an additional door for us to be vulnerable and have data that might be taken. Yeah. Moving forward, one of the things GPA and GWA is working together on is to combine our IT departments. It makes sense just because of the fact that we service both customers. Both a household would have both a water and power meter, and we share the same technology. We are doing that right now, and a lot of the applications that we have, including our customer information systems, is a shared instance where we both have same customers on board. And we also work together in doing cybersecurity training. We are working on several grant funds to gain more technology equipment and services, and that's been helpful for us too. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you. Esther?
Havadin, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the 37th Guam Legislature. Thank you for having us here today. Before I begin, Madam, I'd like to introduce a coworker of mine who is here with Guam Homeland Security, and that is Ms. Lucy Perez. And she will be talking specifically about ESF2 function, which is the emergency support function that's activated during emergencies. And in particular, that would be telecom, a telecom platform. So, Madam Chair, earlier you asked us to report on breaches, but I have no breaches to report to you, ma'am. But if you would accept the progress report, I would be delighted to provide a progress report on what Guam Homeland Security has been doing since I have taken office in June of this year. A little history: in November of last year, Guam Homeland Security was awarded a $1.5 million cybersecurity grant. A condition of that was to submit a plan for approval from the Office of Critical Infrastructure Security Agency, better known as CISA, in order to receive the funding. I am pleased to report that on November 9th, DHS CISA approved our plan. It is called the Pacific CyberGuard Contra y Peligro Island-Wide Cybersecurity Plan. This plan highlights the ongoing collaboration with Guam's hardworking IT talent within our government agencies and local organizations and our federal partners and agencies, also known as CISA, the Guam National Guard, the FBI, and the Coast Guard, to name a few. And as we work together to synchronize the whole of government strategy to effectively counter cyber incidents that could affect our territory and our region. Madam Speaker, this plan operates as an incident annex to the broader Guam Emergency Response Plan, detailing the roles, responsibilities, and collaborative measures to be taken by local government agencies and departments. It's designed to be a dynamic document that continuously adapts and improves, drawing from ongoing planning, tabletop exercises, and lessons learned from real-world experiences. Taking guidance from the Presidential Policy Directive, also known as PPD 4.1, which sets the U.S. federal government's response parameters for cyber incidents, the PCG emphasizes and embodies the importance of a unified and coordinated whole-of-government approach to handling cyber incidents affecting our region. Oversight of this document is provided by the Guam Office of Homeland Security and the Guam Office of Technology, who are also designated as the cyber IT experts for the Mariana Fusion Region Center. And these agencies collaborate with a variety of local government departments and agencies to ensure its currency and effectiveness. And Madam Speaker and members of the 37th Guam Legislature, by adopting this specific CyberGuard Contra y Peligro Island-Wide Cybersecurity Plan as an incident annex to our Guam Emergency Response Plan, I hereby affirm its importance and relevance. Thank you for your attention. I'm welcome to any questions.
Thank you, Esther. Did you want to?
Hafaday Manana Sidus. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some insights. So my name is Lucia Perez, and I am the ESF2 for emergency support. And what the number 2 means is telecommunication. So my role during an incident or even in blue skies is to work with the Office of Technology, Guam Homeland Security, and Office of Civil Defense, inclusive of the Mariana Regional Fusion Center, to collaborate with our private sector telecom companies, both U.S.-owned and of the after effects of Typhoon Mawar. And if some of you remember, communications was a big issue. It's one of the issues, right? So it wasn't just not being able to communicate, but what was happening when we couldn't communicate, when we couldn't see what was going on. All of our focus was just trying to restore services, yet that was an opportunity for our adversaries to come in and through the back doors and go and sneak in and see what they can find, right? Not necessarily just to provide a disruption to our crown jewels. And, you know, for some edification, our crown jewels in terms of cybersecurity is just the gathering of information assets that are of greatest value and that would cause major impact if compromised. So depending on who sits around the table and depending on the user, those crown jewels can mean different things. Some individuals take a look at cybersecurity and think, it's all a hype until it hits the pocketbook, right? Until it causes a death, until we no longer have power and, God forbid, water. Because some people will say, and I'm sorry, Melvin, they can live without power for a couple of hours, but water, that's a necessity of life. So my role is to continue working with the Office of Technology and all of our private partners, our financial institutions, our telecom companies, even our field companies, right? And all those that are ancillary to all of our critical infrastructure. Like GMH, we need to work with those that make oxygen for them. We need to work with those that provide the mills. With power, I need to work with the telecom companies that provide the infrastructure for them so that they can see their network. And so I sit here before you requesting and imploring that we do take a look at all the different things that fall into this, such as procurement, right? Procurement in cybersecurity, procurement in IT is a difficult task. It can no longer be the lowest number. It has to be looked at as what can we get to remediate, to prevent, to mitigate a cyber incident. And should that incident happen, what can we do in that emergency? Because there's not going to be time, people, to sit down and ask for market research. You've got the market research right here. We've got vendors on island, we've got people, but it's being able to pull everyone together at that time to do what is right. And that's the assistance I seek. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Robert?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Robert Robigo. I'm the MIS administrator for the judiciary. It's nice to be last. As my colleagues would know, we all don't want to wake up in the morning and get a call from one of our guys and tell us that there's something wrong with the network. Then we find out that it's being held, and we get a note that we need to pay for it to release it. You know, that ransomware, which is quite big out in the States. But for the judiciary, we go out of our way to protect our data. As you may know, and thank God we haven't had any breaches through the leadership of our Chief Justice Robert Torres, and our Administrator of the Court, Danielle Rossetti. We work closely with our National State Center of State Courts, NCSC. We're just not doing it on our own. We follow closely to their guidelines. Like I mentioned, we've been really lucky to have not had any breaches. We do our best to follow some certain guidelines, safeguards, whether there be administrative, having an inside information systems officer. Next is our physical safeguard, which is trying to keep up with the latest equipment and technology, which is our new data center that we just procured last year. And when you talk about procurement, I understand what you mean about that. The legwork involved in trying to secure an equipment, because our system is over 10 years old. You may have also experienced that. Try to keep up with our operating system. It's very expensive. And third is, which is our technical safeguard, whether it be ensuring that our passwords are encrypted. We all are connected with the FBI. We get our audits as well, because we safeguard, or we're the custodians of our VCCH and our NCSC data. So the protection of our data is very critical. And cybersecurity is at the forefront, not just with private, but with government. So we take great strides in making sure that our data is protected. Sometimes we're in a conversation thinking that as administrators, it's hard to keep up along with the number of work we do. It's almost in our conversation, well, we would need to have a dedicated cybersecurity workforce that will focus purely on just cybersecurity. I myself am not going to admit that, I could say I put my staff through training. We have yet to go through our certifications, even myself, to keep up with it. But we need a solid group out there that can just keep their eyes on it 24 hours, because you can't keep up with this. But it's nice to be aware. It's nice to meet with all of you. And I look forward to any suggestions. I've also had my conversation with Frank, to upgrade our protection against any cyber threats that hits our government. That's all I have to present. Any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I start the questioning component, I just want to note that for the legislative branch, we do have our MIS. Gio plays a very big part. I don't know his last name, but Naz, and Gio Naz, and I know that he's troubleshooting right now, or he'd be here, but we do have the Committee on Rules chair with us who says that he's been in working communication with OTEC to fold us into the equation as we too need to make sure that our system here is up to par with the guidelines and working with all of you. And there was a comment that was said, right? Working together and literally pulling our strengths from the expertise that we have from all the agencies. Together we become stronger and better in the defense of our protection of our island. I did want to note also that as it relates to cybersecurity training, and I'll go ahead and start this with OTEC, and if anybody wants to chime in into any questions that our colleagues ask, you're more than welcome to do it. I would say go from my left to my right, but on this part of the discussion, I'll open it to any agency when the questions are asked, if they'd like to chime in, okay? I think one of it is, can you share cybersecurity training that your office provides to the government employees, and how does OTEC share in these best practices are used in everyday tasks? I just wanted to make sure that the listening audience knows that too. Please, Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think so. Actually, we do have, we provide quite a bit of resources for the government employees. We actually do have a link on our website where there's awareness training that they actually can take, and there's actually a certification that is issued for any employee that actually has access to the website and can take the awareness training. Let me just turn it over to Victoria to kind of give you a little bit more details.
It's basic cybersecurity training 101. I'd like to actually go more into role-based, and that happens as we start maturing. But we have also training sessions that we go with JIPWIC on a yearly basis, and this is something that we kind of want to mandate with everybody, but there's only like one or two of me, so I need a little help. But we were thinking of actually putting it online and do like an onboarding, offboarding type of project, so that when somebody gets hired or transfers to another agency, that they complete this cybersecurity training. That's the goal.
And usually, sometimes working with the agencies, you can probably work an MOU or an MOA, but in instances like this, that's a possibility based on what we need, may need to be mandated. So if that's policy that can be looked at, then of course you'll let us know. That's our part when it comes to policy. What is the difference between the budget request submitted to BBBMR and what was eventually approved through the governor's executive budget submittal? Of the amount your office requested but was not afforded, how much would you say is needed for critical investments in cybersecurity protections and relevant personnel? I ask this question knowing that we do have a budget coming up for 2025, and I want to make sure that as we look at this being a critical factor for all GovGuam, where do we need our government partners and our agencies to be, with OTEC being a part of the critical component? So, Frank?
Madam Chair, that's actually a very kind of a complex
Loaded question.
But you know, to kind of be direct about it, our budget is in the single digits. It's for FY24. It was around 3.7 million. To kind of contrast, when I first came on board in 2015, our budget was actually $3.5 million. And so it's been consistent in the single digits for at least the last 8 years. Now, I've been consulting and working with other consultants, including big IT consultants such as Gartner, and their assessment of our particular department and our responsibilities is pretty frank in that we should be in the double digits overall, and not necessarily in the single digits. And I think if we enter into what I call the double-digit arena, we would have at least a good foothold on addressing the day-to-day operations, the different types of actions and resources that we actually need. A big example overall in terms of our workforce is because we put certain sensors and alerts into our network, we're able to be alerted of any direct physical breaches and respond to them by actually stopping the breach as soon as we're alerted, and going out and actually identifying where the culprit is. What we don't have is the ability to do the forensics, to understand what happened, who actually penetrated our network, and why it happened. The good news overall is these breaches, none of these breaches were able to penetrate any of our data. They were just recognized signatures by our sensors, and we were able to stop it so that it couldn't actually travel throughout our network. But going back to the issue on budget, it is something that does need to be debated and seriously looked at.
As we look at this presentation moving forward, and I know that you talked about maturing, right, and how we need to be there. I know that OTEC was troubleshooting an agency for the whole government, and when your computer doesn't work, right, where do we go from there? The role has obviously evolved to being a line of defense from foreign actors, and a whole room in China focused on Guam was what was said. And as we ask for more money for OTEC, can you share more about this evolution of OTEC and the need for those resources? And I bring this to play is because the justification and what we've been through, right? Where do we put the priorities? And when we look at health, education, and safety, we've got something knocking on our back doors. And simply put, for the listening audience, is what about the protection for our island based on what's happening today? So if you can chime in on that.
Sure, absolutely, Madam Chair. It boils down to risk management. Once we actually mature in that process, we'd be able to have metrics to help leadership kind of guide where our biggest risks are. I know that there is fear considering the imminent threats that we keep getting notified, and there's a lot of threats. So to have a small, tiny IT department try and manage all of them, it's unreasonable to ask. So having, as an IT administrator working, their job is to actually make the network work. Securing it is a completely different field, and it's a problem worldwide. So the things that we're trying to do with this plan is bring everything together and start trying to move and mature by assisting each other with knowledge base, as well as trying to learn best lessons learned from issues that they have kind of came across in their networks or that they've done to secure their own networks. We learn from each other. Talking is essential. Collaboration is essential. But in regards to being able to determine where the efforts should be put, that all boils down is once you get to a point where you can have proper metrics, that can determine where you actually put most of the money, and you can see there will be a determination of what that investment for that particular control will actually yield, whether it's like a ransomware breach. It would be able to kind of show how much it would cost the government now versus if we actually implemented this control. But we can't have all that information yet until we start this program, until we start our progress and maturing. So the baseline is the first part. But there are people that we're working with, specifically DOD's INDOPACOM, their cyber incident response team, that's going to be helping kind of like move us a little bit faster along the way. What we don't want to do is we don't want to keep rushing and skipping steps, because cybersecurity is expensive. We don't want to have to kind of like say, oh no, we're here. We thought we were really, well prepared, and then when we start going back, we see more gaps, and then we have to spend more money for the same things that we did before. So we're just trying to do it the right way and think things through and move in a direction so that we can all kind of get to a point where we can help leadership understand where their risks are.
Thank you, Victoria. Does any other agency want to chime in just based on this question, inquiry? The next one is the current response plan for cybersecurity. What is the current response plan for cybersecurity breaches, and how soon does GovGuam's strategy estimate that it will take to implement an improved response plan throughout the government? What improvements would this new response plan include?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
Sorry.
Again, that boils down to maturing. So when we do our tabletop exercises, that's how we kind of determine, and it really determines, it's actually based off of what type of breach. So you can have a breach or an incident that kind of cripples the government where, like, I believe it was the city of Baltimore. They were out, like, for, well, I think a month. And they were still struggling to get back up. So it really determines on how well we can start exercising our plans, how well all the information that we actually have regarding our architecture and our baseline that we can provide the Fed so that we can hurry up and get back up and moving. These are all steps that we're trying to take to get to that point, but I can't give you that answer, Senator, until I get those metrics.
Melvin?
Yeah, Melvin from Guam Power. I think the question should be not how fast we can respond, but do we have a response plan in the first place? And Victoria's correct. It also depends on the type of breach. Depends on what you're protecting, and depends on the impact of that breach itself. GP had a cybersecurity conference. We brought in, Department of Energy was very helpful. We appreciate that. They brought in trainers for their cyber strike exercise, and Office Technology provided people to come on and attend, which I think was a good training. The thing is, an incident response needs to be put into play. Needs to be developed and needs to address the situations on what will happen if this type of incident happens, what's your compensating control, what's your response supposed to be, manual control, whichever. So it's not how fast can we respond, it's have we developed a response plan. And there's no one response plan for everybody here on the table, honestly. The port has different objectives to protect. Office of Technology has different objectives. Everybody has, for GPA, we have different objectives, and critical for us is also the operational technology. If someone shuts down our SCADA system, the question is, who's going to monitor all 31 substations? Who's going to control switching equipment? Because if we have power fluctuations, if a cloud goes over a solar panel and the power fluctuates, who's going to shift that power to make sure that we don't lose the grid? So it all depends, once again, it's not on how long can we respond back, but who has a response plan, who has the plan in play, who has maintained it, who has walked through it, and who has managed it, because it's going to be a living document. Yeah, so.
Anybody else? Esther?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ma'am, cybersecurity is classified as an all hazard. It sits on that platform together with a typhoon, and that's how we classify a cyber attack. But in this day and age, a cyber attack is going to require a different type of first responder. And we just don't have the depth of those responders right now. What we need to focus on, and I totally agree with what Victoria has said and what, of course, Mel has said. And ma'am, we need to focus on an objective to build and sustain our cyber readiness, not only in our island, but in our region. Without that cyber readiness, that includes cyber hygiene, without that, we probably are falling short of meeting our equipment goals or building our workforce. But like anything, we have to start somewhere. And right now, I think an objective would be to build and sustain our cyber readiness. Look at our resources that are available to us. But it's not going to come, it's going to come at a pretty penny. We have to try to look and explore ways on how to attract, but most importantly, how to retain our IT professionals. We continue to train and provide opportunities for growth within our own government agencies. But once someone starts waving money, a lot of money in front of our IT professionals, they're going to go to where the money is. And that's a fact. And we're struggling with that right now. And until we can provide some kind of incentive for our government of Guam workers to come and stay with us, we're going to continue to have this revolving door of people coming and leaving, and they'll go to the Navy, they'll go to the Air Force, they'll go to our federal partners who can offer them a better package deal than what the government of Guam can offer. Make no mistake, we have great talent. We have great talent on this side, and we need to find ways to keep them with us. Thank you, Madam.
So retention is key.
Retention is key, ma'am.
I believe all of us here work within our means. It was mentioned earlier. It is important the type of technology we're going to procure, and procurement is a big. I think on your level, it is a big thing. We don't want to waste our time with purchasing Thunderbolt equipment when we know we should be purchasing Dells. All the OSs are just generally installed, but it's just trying to get the right equipment. It doesn't mean that that's the answer. The cybersecurity threat is one of the top issues in our industry, and from what I see, from all like what Melvin said at some of the conferences we all attend to, it's nationwide. So everyone is trying their best to come up with their own plans, but having meetings like this to share some of the notes and knowledge is a big advantage. And I just believe that if the focal point is trying to get a group to focus on government needs, that possibly could be an option as well.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the site?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Vince Kichichu again with Guam Memorial Hospital IT Administrator. Just wanted to share, going back to the Madam Chair's question of incident response plan. So during the hospital's network shutdown and restoration earlier this year, for the 6 weeks that we were down, the hospital implemented an incident command center out of the boardroom, and then of course it transferred over to our planning department. During that time, we used Incident Command Center for all end users that were actually on manual mode to report any other failures or needs that they have while running on manual mode. So part of our after-action report, process improvement, one of the objectives is to develop a incident response plan. That's actually in progress. Once we're done, we're going to present it to our leadership and to the board for approval. But yes, very important to have incident response plan, and I understand what Victoria and Vince had mentioned also regarding that. We need more data, we need matrix, but developing the plan, I think is very doable. It depends on the incidents that's going to occur and the response that we need to provide for those types of incidents. Thank you.
Thank you. As it relates to the statements that were just noted earlier, my next question was going to be, can you share with us a little bit more about the changes in procurement law that you were asking? And I know this question was brought up before. I want to give an example. During the summer, we were working with our interns, and having had the opportunity to work with GMH, it was noted that sometimes the cheapest way isn't the best way when it comes to healthcare, and how does that play out when it comes to technology? I bring that up as an example because in our processes as far as procurement, we always have to look. The law, statute tells us we have to look for the cheapest. But what's most practical, or what is best when it comes to the need? Cheapest may not always be that part of the component that was needed. So I think I wanted to start with you, Frank, or to the OTEC team, because as we look for justifications, where can we move from here? And I'm working on that. Legislation is ready. Okay.
Well, when it comes to procurement, a lot of the laws are surrounding the price overall. And in procurement law, to me, what needs to actually change is it needs to change from price to actual value. Because technically, you can get the best price, but does it really work for you? So the formulas for value need to be injected into the law, somewhere into the law. Also, with respect to procurement, in terms of the organization, basically procurement is a supply chain for the government. That's how we get all our products and all our services. And so the focus needs to be on the personnel who are handling the procurement. They need to be technically the subject matter experts on whatever they're procuring, whether it's law enforcement, for example, the procurement of law enforcement devices, to technology, if you will, or even from a healthcare standpoint. One of the things that's severely lacking from a personnel standpoint is the fact that there is no technology buyers, so they don't know the marketplace. In every enterprise, they have controls in their procurement on the supply chain side, and they assure whatever they buy works for that particular enterprise. With government, it's much more diluted, if you will, to the extent that the expectations of the buyers, how they get paid, and their experience overall really creates a big gap for all of us around the table when it comes to any kind of procurement. So ultimately, efficiencies need to be built into the law, because basically when when some kind of breach occurs, they're not going to wait for something to be procured for us to bridge that gap. We're going to have the skill set and the resources in place to respond to that.
Victoria?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the issues, I believe, as we start to mature is figuring out, because there's supposed to be teams that actually vet products, IT products that actually go into your network. That takes, when I was speaking with the state of Nevada, they had a team of at least 6 people looking over the procurement of these products. There's organizations out there like NASPO or State Ramp or FedRAMP GSA, if that's something that can at least be allowed for our IT departments to access, it at least eliminates those extra personnel to be able to do that kind of work, because it's already vetted. There's certain mandated requirements that in order to take part in NASPO, GSA, FedRAMP, State Ramp, they're already vetted for their products and their third-party risk. So once we start maturing, that's also another option. It's not only do we have to worry about what we have in our own network, now we have to worry about who we're talking to and our neighbors that we do business with, because that also affects us.
Any comments once more? If not, I think this is the good time to segue into my colleagues asking questions. And Senator Tello, thank you for coming, and please Comments or question?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to all of you. Thank you so much for, putting this at the forefront. The information that you provided is very promising, and how we're moving forward. I think it all began when the federal government, as well as Homeland, they're not even here. The National Guard was a big part of implementing, getting everyone together and discussing, cybersecurity. As you know, I've written a couple articles and worked on trying to find a way to protect our island from being so close to other Asian countries. And it all started with fiber optic cables and utilizing these cables that are connected to other entities like China, other foreign countries. I guess the first question I have, though, with OTEC is, what server do you guys use? Do you use IT&E, Docomo, or do you use all servers that are provided here on Guam for your IT setup?
Senator, I think what you mean is what service provider?
Yes, yes.
Right now, for the Office of Technology, we're actually leveraging all three major. Actually, technically, there's 4.
Right.
But for just the internet provider in itself, we have GTA. And in terms of the infrastructure, we're layered with Docomo and IT&E, as well as Pacific Data Systems. So,
why do you use all of these?
Well, all of them actually provide the services that we need, and we just go for, in this case, we actually go for best price and value. So,
okay. Well, Docomo had gotten hit big time, with their infrastructure. Do you have any backup in case Docomo goes down again? Do you hop onto the, I figured the reason why you do have more than one service provider is because in the event one goes down, that you're able to, kill the line and go directly to another one because it can be infiltrated through the line. Fiber optic cables is where it's coming from. And now they're moving away to satellite situations, which makes it a lot different. Anyways, please go ahead.
Yes. Well, Docomo does not provide our internet. They just provide the network infrastructure. So we have many multiple dark fiber segments that does not pass through any of their internet. It only goes through our internet, and it's behind our firewall. So we don't have the potential to be breached by their network.
So GPA, what firewall do you have? Do you have it installed? Do you use Docomo or do you use IT&E? What service provider do you use?
In this case, I think you mean ISP. We actually have a mix. We use both GTA, Pacific Data Systems, and Docomo, yes.
Okay, 3 as well.
Yeah. And we use them, and we, just like Frank said, we use them also for failover. In case one goes down, which we've encountered a couple times already, we fail over to another ISP, yes.
So that being said, the reason why I asked the two of you is because, you have a lot to lose, especially with OT being the head front, and then, of course, yourself. Port Authority is just important. All the other agencies, don't get me wrong. But are all the other agencies using more than one service provider?
Yeah.
Everyone, okay. You only use one? Which one? GTA, okay. Victoria, how many times does the CPC meet and the CWC meet?
For the working group, we try to meet monthly.
Monthly, okay.
I'd like us to actually meet a little bit more. We were just having that conversation for the planning committee. But I'm in daily collaborations with Guam Homeland Security as we're trying to move forward. But there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts that are kind of happening right now. So as soon as we kind of get a handle, and after this hearing, we're going to set a more frequent schedule.
Is the National Guard in that group?
Of course.
Okay,
yes.
They are. They're just not here at the table today. Okay. Just wanted to verify that. Speaking of Homeland Security, you received $1.5 million from CISA, that's how you pronounce it, grant. And it was a plan that you put in place. What are you planning on, what is that plan to use that 1.5? Is it 1.5? Yeah.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Yes, ma'am, the plan is 1.5 million. The majority of that plan will probably be used towards salaries, towards contractors, towards equipment. But before we can use any of that money, the plan had to be approved first The majority of the plan that we have is going to focus on training and education, building our network, building sustainability, building our workforce before we can proceed with any other factor in that plan.
Will that bleed over into the other agencies to assist
Yes, ma'am.
them? Okay, and they have a piece of the pie on this, right? Okay, as long as they're involved, that's good to hear. You mentioned GPA, that you had 2 to 3 times more of the federal government coming and checking your systems. Is that yearly or monthly, or what is I'm just curious how, how the federal government is treating this situation where we're at. I mean, we're the tip of the spear. I mean, this is we've got missiles that are planning on being here, and they're all going to be done online, through cyber. I'm kind of concerned about that. But anyways, how many times are they coming to visit GPA and checking out your systems?
So as mentioned before, there's been more of a focus from federal agencies on the last 2 years. We've actually had 3 assessments this year by the FBI, by CISA, and the Coast Guard, which is actually still ongoing at the moment. Yeah, within this year itself. Yeah.
So about 6 times this year then?
No, 3 times this year. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
they came together, federal and Coast Guard.
They came as separate entities, separate groups. CISA came in conjunction to do separate assessments for the hospital and some other agencies. FBI had an assessment team here back in May, just before the typhoon. And coincidentally, that was when the Volt Typhoon notification came out at the same time. Yeah. As mentioned before, federal authorities, federal government's been more focused on Guam just because of the situation. Before we would get their visits, I think we can all agree, it was a meet and greet, see how we can help you. But nowadays, the federal government is coming not just to meet and greet, but also provide services, which is great because it helps us with resourcing issue. They're helping us with monitoring. I'm sure a couple of the agencies here are using the free monitoring services that they provide also. Yeah.
Before they go to GPA, do they check in with like Homeland Security? Does Homeland Security greet these individuals and then they tell you, hey, we're going to go to GPA and we're going to visit with them. We're going to go to the hospital and visit with them, Port Authority. So they do, so you log in all these, the meetings that come in and ensure that when they do come here that they visit all our agencies.
Yep.
Okay, the other question I had is for you, Frank. What is the standard time frame of notification if an agency has been breached to the public?
Well, in terms of standards, I believe there's actually a law where if there is a breach of the actual data, there is, I don't know the specific number, but I know it's probably within, I don't know, within 72 hours.
72 hours.
Yeah. And that's by law, and we're actually fined.
It is by law.
We're actually fined if you don't meet those criteria. But
you're fined?
Again, you're fined. We would actually be fined if we did not meet that criteria by the federal government.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's OTEC or if it's the port or it's the hospital or any other agency, they have 72 hours to notify the public whenever there's been a breach, correct? Regardless if it's in-house, it's done by maybe an employee who got their hands on a credit card or used something, or regardless, it's still a breach. 72 hours by law.
If it's a breach of personal data that's in our databases, then there is a process that kicks in of notification.
Okay.
And the respective department, for example, if it's the Department of Public Health, they would lead that charge for the notification. If it was, for example, the Guam Police Department, they would have to lead that charge for the notification.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate it. I don't have very much time. I have another appointment, but I, again, appreciate this roundtable and looking forward to more questions. Even if it's offline, please, I'll probably be calling you guys as well. So I appreciate it again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tydegui. Senator Chris Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank everyone for being here. Seeing a lot of you guys lately, and I look forward to meeting and discussing with you guys ways that we can improve our cybersecurity here at the legislature. I did have a question just for Lillian. And so you're saying that there was not a breach at the hospital, it was an intrusion?
Per the definition that we're following, the Code of Federal Regulation in terms of acquisition and manipulation of the data, the risk assessment that was completed by our risk management officer and IT, there was no evidence that there was any acquisition of the PHI or manipulation or destruction of it.
And so you had said in your testimony that when you investigated the intrusion, that you had found out there were several other instances where your network was accessed without your knowledge?
When they looked at the logs, yes, when the team reviewed the logs, they found some evidence that there were some evidence of activity by that intruder.
How would you characterize that kind of activity? Are they just snooping around if there wasn't a theft of the data?
I can't see that it's theft of the data, but I'll let Vince, since it was his team who were really into it, very in detail.
Yeah, so the breach was actually accessing the network through our firewall at that time, only to find out, in addition to, these were employees that just left GMH in early January, and they still had access to the network. So the logs for the network firewall shows when and how long they logged in after their termination date with the hospital. When my staff found that, they took a deep dive and they reported it to leadership. That's when the decision was made to go ahead and shut down the network and change our entire network scheme to prevent that from happening again. Because these were individuals that built the network for the hospital for 30 years. Yeah, and then, they left retirement. But the access was through the firewalls based on the logs, but as far as system logs for accessing the data, copying the data, downloading the data, removing the data, show no evidence of that. And that was our determination, yeah.
Thank you for that, Vince, and you kind of answered my next question, which was what practices did you institute to prevent that from happening again? And yeah. You said you just overhauled your whole network.
Yeah, part of our network shutdown and restoration was to change everything, as far as our IP schemes from our internet service providers, from the firewall, from our routers, from our network switches, to our application servers. We changed all the IP addresses to a new IP scheme. And that was a lot of work, and that took a lot of time. So initially, our initial estimate was 48 hours to do this, but the volume of systems that we had to change the IP schemes on was beyond our 48 hour. It took us actually 5-6 weeks at the most. But that was the plan, just changing it all so that even if these former employees had backdoors into our system, they couldn't come back in because of the change.
Was there any discussion with these former employees?
Yes. In fact, we reached out to them to provide us their credentials because they still had admin credentials to most of the applications or systems that they were maintaining for the hospital, supporting for the hospital. In addition to that, when we contacted the FBI, they reached out to these employees. And that's part of the investigation.
That's ongoing?
It's still ongoing. It hasn't been finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Frank or Ms. Victoria, I wanted to ask, because you had talked about recruitment and retention, which is something, an issue that we struggle with, I'm sure you know, across the government of Guam. But we have made numerous efforts to address recruitment and retention with, nurses, corrections officers, law enforcement across the board. But we're now finding that after having implemented a lot of these pay increases and related bonus type structures, that we're still facing the same issues. We're still facing a shortage of police officers. We're facing a shortage of corrections officers. And so I'm not saying that giving everyone a raise and then a bonus structure on top of that doesn't work. But when you talk about recruitment and retention of IT oriented professionals. I'd know from personal experience in trying to shake the tree and find qualified applicants to run our own IT here at the legislature that it's a very limited pool of people that we're trying to pull from. And so that being said, have you had any discussion with Department of Administration relative to a pay study for this specific class of employees, and do they fall into the general pay plan? And just any discussion, any efforts that you've had relative to recruitment and retention?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. Yes, we are working with the Department of Administration. We actually are making a lot of strides in even changing position titles as well as position descriptions, as well, including eliminating a lot of the older titles. For example, we discovered that they still had classifications for key punch operators and data control clerks that we could still actively recruit for, which there is no position. Nobody key punches anymore. So all those are going through a process with HR to just modernize the position descriptions and actually make it much more attractive when they're applying for the classified service, for example.
Okay, and so it sounds like you're still in the preliminary stages, so you're probably not able to provide a percentage, like a 22% increase or whatever.
Well, we had some adjustments on there, as well as some changes in the position descriptions. For example, we did add positions for cybersecurity where there was none. We also added positions that included, for example, web developers. So those are all kind of ongoing, and what we've worked with HR is to make the salary structures commensurate and competitive with other entities in the IT industry.
Thank you for that. Could you maybe give us a little insight on because there's been a lot of discussion here about the response protocol, and maybe if you could just, for the viewing public, explain the process if it is the federal government that becomes aware of a cybersecurity breach. Is there a single point person in the government of Guam that this information is communicated to, and how are we relative to, or are we in need of certain types of security clearances to be able to receive this information and act on it?
Well, actually, when it comes to breaches itself, that really is up to the entity that actually receives the breach. Our federal partners, other than acknowledging that there was a breach, they're not in a position where they would alert us directly about any breaches. So we need to make sure we have the tools in place, and of course we have different vectors, if you will, to actually sense those breaches. But when it comes to the federal partners, they can only acknowledge and also advise on how to mitigate, but they can't, there's certain restrictions. I don't know, Victoria, if you want to kind of elaborate on how they would respond.
Frank is correct. We're actually trying to create, it's all about trust, right? And finding out who actually got breached, because there's still a culture of shame that we have to try to get past. And that's prevalent around the world. Once we get to that point where we're actually talking freely, we're trying to create, under the Fusion Center, like at Lee State and GHS, a platform where we can all share these types of incidents so that we can figure out how best to be able to respond to the public should they need to be notified.
Senator?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, if I could add to that.
Yes, Esther. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. So, yes, sir, we do have the Mariana Region Fusion Center, who is the government of Guam's first contact if, for any hazardous, any breach, any law enforcement specific incident that happens. We have 8 individuals that are assigned to there from the various law enforcement agencies, and they all have training to accept and entertain reports in a criminal nature that they could look into and then provide, myself, OTEC, even the governor, with some recommended course of actions on how to deal with the threat. They're trained to do threat analysis. But the Mariana Region Fusion Center would be the government of Guam's contact place for any incidents any cyber-related incidents. Thank you.
Ma'am, has there ever been an instance where we were apprised or briefed on an attack or a near attack or a near incident that required people on our side to have appropriate security clearances? And is that something that we need to look at government-wide to kind of empower some of these IT people, if that's even something that's needed?
Sir, the answer to the first question is no, and the answer to your second question is yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Siniclas, do you have any questions or comments?
More like comments for everybody. I'd like to thank you all for your dedication and trying to keep all the information safe. I noticed that there's different tiers of information that we have to guard. I think the most important thing is the public wants to know that in case of an emergency or a disaster that we're able to carry out our missions without chaos, and or maybe even in the midst of chaos, that we're able to complete our mission. And I'm just learning a lot of stuff here today, and it's very enlightening to see and hear that you all are working with federal partners. Given that we don't have all the resources, that are available to you or to us, but it's nice to know that you are working with high-level federal partners. I just read a couple months ago that China turns out about 400,000 engineers a year, far more than what we've been pushing out here in the U.S. And it's a great security concern, but again, it's nice to know, and I encourage you to continue to utilize our federal partners and work hand in hand with them as much as you can to ensure the safety of the information and the ability to maintain order, public order, should any disaster happen. And I think there's one more thing that I might want to say. Oh, and in terms of employment and retention, I encourage you to keep a positive atmosphere in where you work, and encourage your employees to stay. Not all of us are motivated by money, otherwise we'd lose all of you guys. And some of us want to serve our island in the capacities that we're in, and bring about change that way. So if you can continue to encourage our workforce in very positive ways, and we can retain them in such a way where it's not always money, it's not always the issue. So I want to continue to thank you for doing that, and continue as we move forward. I have nothing further, ma'am. Thank you.
Senator Siniclas. Senator Roy, any comments or questions?
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. I just wanted to clarify for all the agencies present. First and foremost, thank you guys for your presence today and all your service and your continued hard work to ensure that cybersecurity to some extent is being upheld in our government agencies. But certainly we had some issues that Typhoon malware showed our weak points, right? No offense to GPA. Do you guys have power generation systems at your agencies in the event of the typhoon or whatever? Unfortunately, the generator 1, 2, and 3 is down, unfortunately, right? Do you guys have your own backup system to pick up the load for your cybersecurity efforts?
Senator, I can answer that question. We were actually active during Typhoon Maiwar. We didn't lose power or internet service. We didn't lose power because we have our own generator. We also have redundant UPSs that are in our data centers. So we were one of the few agencies that actually maintained our systems, and we provided a lot of the connectivity that the ESF2 and Department of Homeland Security used during the storm for emergency management.
Okay, thank you so much.
Senator, Guam Homeland Security does have a generator and a backup generator, so we have redundancy. The thing that we need to work on more is our communications, redundancy in communications, but we have improved that process since the typhoon, and we do have redundancy now.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think it is very important for us to have two network companies, right? You don't want to have one GTA and then Docomo, right? God bless Docomo. I know they're really suffering in their business, but I think this is a learning curve for a lot of us, right? That if one network company crashes, we need to have some kind of redundancy plan to ensure that services continue to be carried out no matter what the situation is. So I think every agency should probably double up on their network services. I know you guys have a cell phone service from one company, right? For your use?
Sir, we actually have. Sir, we have redundant cell phone services. We actually have we also subscribe to all three carriers. Plus, we have satellite now that we didn't have before, and then we also have FirstNet. And then we're actually looking into the possibility of Starlink.
Wow, Elon Musk knows where Guam is. Great. Okay. Well, yes, I just want to make sure that that's brought up onto the table. Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Again, thank you guys for your service.
Thank you, Senator Roy. Truly appreciate the questions asked. I just wanted maybe a clarification based on colleague Taitagui's inquiry, and I just wanted to make sure because the committee was looking at creating mandatory notifications for cybersecurity, and the question that I was going to ask was what was a good timeline where when once a breach occurs, whether it be for patient information, social security, credit cards, and all that, when a breach happens, we want to make sure that the victims know as soon as possible. And the answer was at 72 hours. That's a federal mandate, right?
Yes.
That's correct.
So no need to create legislation in the policy level for the government of Guam. It's already adhered to. And
yes.
that doesn't change, right? Okay. I just wanted to make sure. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, I know that this is the first time in a long time that we've had a lot of the agencies come out together, both Homeland Security and OTEC. And literally, you guys really have stepped up to the plate. And for the viewing audience out there, they needed to see this. They needed to see where our security measures are at, and as far as cybersecurity, we need to know who you're working with. It was good to know that a lot of the counterparts federally and locally are coming together and working together. The utilities, the autonomous agencies, you guys all have it. I know that the judiciary talked about cyber security workforce that is needed. And if there's policy that we can work with from this perspective, then our door is open. As the oversight chair, I think it's important that we continue these matters. I'm not here to put blame or anything. When something happens, Guam has always been known that when we go through our trials and tribulations, we always come together to try and pick up, get back to normal as fast as we can, because we're such a resilient island. But as each day goes, with the threats coming from all walks of life to us, we got to make sure that we're ready. The people, our community needs to make sure that we're ready. And I know that with all the players here and with all the partners here, that communication is being done. The people just needed to know that, and this is why these kind of roundtables are very important, so that we can continue to share from all perspectives, from the education component to all the autonomous agencies, from the hospitals perspective, and maybe even from an educational perspective. And again, as we continue to have, whether it be quarterly meetings, monthly, I know that everybody's up on meetings and coming together, but when we talk about the maturity and us having to harden and strengthen, I think this is where we need to do, is having these discussions so that our island knows where we're at. So with that being said, to everyone for being here and taking the time to brief us about our cybersecurity infrastructure and the efforts you are making collectively to harden our systems. And I know and I believe in my heart there's so much more that needs to be done. And with that being said, it is 11:05. I will call this roundtable meeting adjourned and extend my undangkulana sidus masi sidus and bini DC hamzu, and we'll continue to come back and work on this kind of presentation for our island again, maybe in the next coming months. So sidus masi, sana masi. Thank you.